Kevin Kaster of Kaster's Custom Cutting. My son Steven and my son Daniel both work here and hopefully are slowly taking over so I can go on more vacations. So we used to go portable all the time, and we initially had a guy that had his own fir trees, and he was short 3 or 4 beams or whatever, and he said, Kevin, can you get me some to match of what I've cut off of my place, off of his place? So I bought a log from one of my neighbors, basically threw it in the front yard here, set the mill up and cut the beams that he wanted, and of course had a couple pieces left over. And then after that I had a guy that saw our timbers in somebody's house and said, wow, we really like your timbers, we like the bandsaw finish, all of that, but I have no timber. Can you get me my package? So then I bought a log truck load and dumped it basically in the front yard. And it's just kind of morphed from there. And as you'll see as we walk down, the front yard is kind of got taken over, the side yard with all the mill stuff. So when we get down here where you can actually see the slabs, well, I guess I can tell you here. So as you look here, we've got, these are all urban salvage. You've got some maple laying in here. That's actually a cedar log out of somebody's yard. Got some black walnut, and actually black walnut with a little bit of metal stain. I don't know if you're seeing that, but you see the black on it there. That's a metal stain from a nail. In fact, if you look just up to the top, there is a nail, showing right there in that log. That's the stuff we try to avoid, but you get what you get when it comes out of somebody's yard. So all of this is stuff that's waiting to go into the mill. And then as we walk down here a little further, you'll see the slabs. So these are all slabs that we have milled, and they are sitting air drying. We figure an inch a year for air drying. So if it's a 2-inch slab, it'll sit here for about 2 years. 3-inch or so, it'll sit for about 3 years. And then it moves into the kiln and then flattener and hopefully out the door.
Wagner L622 meter with the L722 stack probe, and this is really nice. So we were talking about slabs earlier, but again, same idea with lumber, being able to get in here and see what we're at. Let me get this on the right species. Oh, we're already on there, on Doug fir, okay. So yeah, I mean this way, because before, I think talking earlier, handheld meter, you'd only be able to get to the top. So I wouldn't know, checking this wood, what any of the rest of the inside stuff is. So something like this is really nice, and this stuff is just put in, so even right now, so that's reading, about 20, I'm getting like 20s, up to 25, whereas in here in the center, we're maxing out at 31 in spots. So, and that's gonna be different as it dries. This stuff's gonna dry a lot quicker than the center. So yeah, we're able to stick this, and again, anywhere you wanna go and how far in, and we can just check and see. That's all still staying at 31. So usually when we're doing the kilns, we do multiple spots, different depths, and just kind of see where we're at, which this isn't the best example because it's all just soaking wet since it just got put in. But yeah, we're able to do that also with slabs. We would have this kind of same stack, same spacing, be able to check, and that's really good for those because we don't want the center of the wood being wet. And again, even having our stacks, and you'll see as we walk around, they go in the way they're stacked here outside air drying. They usually go in that same way with a full log if it's all together. So
how often do you check?
Usually at least once a week. Try and check. Like this stuff, as I know it's getting drier, I will probably start checking it more frequently. Same with slabs, as we know they're getting closer to being finished. Might check them a couple times a week. And depending on the species, like this fir, is gonna then at the end, when it's to the correct moisture content, then we do a heat treat. Turn it up to 150 for 72 hours is 3 days.
24 to 72.
24 to 72. And same thing with slabs. So that'll kill bugs, and that'll also set any pitch.
So at this point we're running a couple different mills. We started out running a Wood Miser HD40 when we were doing portable work, and we've kind of progressed a little bit. We've got a HD50, which has a different log turner, and we've actually gone to electric since we don't go portable anymore. And then the other mill we're running is called a Lucas mill out of Australia. Basically a big chainsaw with a 23 horse motor on it, which is right here. We've got a small log in here right now, but it's just a great big chainsaw bar basically. These rails go up and down. So you come in, take your first cap, then you got crank handles, you drop it down, however much you want, 2 or 3 inches, and then it just slowly rolls through. It's actually on a set of rollers. So you start on that end and you just slowly walk it through the log. And then at this point, like this one's done, it's got wedges in it, we'll just slide it off, bring it back and start over. We're capable of doing 32 feet long. We've got an extension on the mill. Got a short log up there right now that he's working on. Working on a cedar log at this point. Probably starting out cutting some fence boards. That's the fun part of cedar. If you look at the end of that log, you get a lot of rot and a lot of defect. That's the western red cedar around our area. It's kind of what it is. And then over here, we've actually, after everything has been through the dryers, air dried and through the kiln, then we've got a flattener over here that we can do 72 inches wide. So as you can see, like this had a little twist in it, so this we didn't surface down, but this has been surfaced. This will be nice and flat. The nice thing about the flattener is the pieces lay there, so they're laying, and so they get completely flattened. Where a lot of times if you send them through a planer, you've got your pinch rollers and it can kind of actually still come out curved, where this actually flattens it. As you can see, it's got a 5-inch cutter head that's run by a joystick that just goes up and down on the piece and slowly flattens it, and then we crank it down a little bit and you go over it again and flip them over and hopefully end up with a flat piece at some point, and goes into somebody's bar top or dining room table or restaurant table or something.
We cut at 2.5 inches thick and 3.25 inches thick, and people want different sizes for that, especially for the bigger tables. They want thicker pieces. Usually we take off about 1/2 inch, but every piece is a little different because there can be a lot of twists, like in maple or especially oak. You may end up taking 3/4 inch or more off there, and sometimes like redwood sits pretty flat, so you may take 1/8 inch off both sides and it'll be pretty much all cleaned up.
The one thing we've learned over time is that Oregon white oak is one of them that likes to move a lot. So like we've run flooring for people out of our logs or their logs, and to finish at 3/4 inch thick flooring, we will cut almost 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 inch, where if you were running probably a Doug fir floor out of vertical grain or something like that, you could cut it 1 inch and it would flatten out and be good. But your Oregon white oak just moves around the knots and moves all over. Same thing with the slabs. We're doing actually those sometimes 1/4 to 1/8 inch heavier also, so that we end up with something that's not too thin. So we didn't mention this, but we're running 2 different kinds of kilns here. We've got one of them that's a DH kiln. It's a Nile system with a dehumidifier and then the fans. And then we've got the Northland kiln that's basically an air exchange unit that we set the timer, and it'll run every so often and exhaust out the wettest air through a little exchange unit it's got in it. And they're both heated right now with electric heat to warm them up to temperature. You know, during the winter, it's a little tougher to keep them up to temperature. We usually we're running right around 100 degrees in both kilns as we're drying, so that we're not doing it too quick. And it's actually been good with the meter, because we'll check how much the moisture content is dropping. And if it's not dropping quick enough, we can change what we're doing. If it's dropping too quick, we'll change what we're doing so we're not case hardening stuff. It's very easy, especially with cedar. You can really push it and you'll get cell collapse. So you got to watch what you're doing and make sure you're not collapsing the cell, especially on the cedar. Your softwoods will collapse.
We do have some walnut lumber and some other things in here. You can see we have them tagged for inventory. We have redwood over here, walnut. This is all black walnut. Sometimes we do English walnut. It just depends what someone has. And then also Oregon white oak is pretty common, and then big leaf maple. But we do get in a lot of other species in here. And we also do some small rounds like these over here that people like to use. Sometimes it's just off the knots of the trees. We'll cut a few pieces off. But most of them are larger pieces like this that you can use for a tabletop or conference table, or people book match 2 of them, or do river tables where you do epoxy in the middle of them. We try to keep a lot in stock of different sizes, since everyone wants something different, with thickness, with the width, how much it narrows down, if it's got some character in it. Some people like them with holes or rot in it so they can do epoxy work, and other people just want a straight piece. They can just put a finish on.
So sometimes as we're drying, if you start taking too much moisture out of the kilns too quick, or you get your heat too high, you can dry the outside of this wood, the outside cells, and they quit moving water, and that's when you get case hardening. And what that means is your outside may be dried down to 6 or 8%, and your core can still be 10, 20%, and that moisture won't move out of that. And if it's a slab, it's probably not a huge issue, but if you're going to take that piece and maybe rip it into back pieces for a chair or a rocking chair, as soon as you open that piece up, you're going to find that 20% moisture content. And you can have a piece that's 20% on this side of the piece of wood and 8% on this side. Well, that's going to make it, as soon as you rip it, it's going to twist and roll up into a pretzel. So one of the things that we use a moisture meter for is when we're actually drying customers' wood and ours, we don't put anything in the dry kiln until it's at least under 30%. We prefer starting under 25%. There can be a couple issues if you put them in too soon. One of it would be that it's going to tie up your kiln. If you're putting in 40–50% moisture content, it's going to stay in the kiln for several months, which is kind of a waste of your kiln space and your electricity and everything else. So, and the other thing is, if you put it in there with that moisture content, you've got a better chance of doing what we talked about, case hardening, because you're going to be sucking the moisture out quicker than an air drying situation usually. And so we use it a lot when people bring their stuff in. They tell me, oh, it's been in Grandpa's garage for 10 years, or it's been cut for however long. what tells us the truth of the whole story is actually our moisture meter. It doesn't matter what the customer says, where it's been, how it's been stored. We can meter it, the meter tells us what's going on, and then we know what we're working with. Changed what we do. You know, we used to just go out and cut people's wood and leave them green wood. We've started doing value added. So we'll take our wood or a customer's wood, mill it up, air dry it, kiln dry it, run it through a molder. So if you've got a cherry log in your front yard that Grandpa planted, you can bring that log in, we'll mill it up, we'll dry it for you, we'll get it molded and bring you finished flooring that you can actually put in your kitchen or your entryway. And so for us, it's been value added and getting it further down the process. At that point, it's actually a usable piece of wood for somebody that's just a homeowner. We do recommend, if we sell any flooring or whatever, we recommend that people go and take it, put it in their house and acclimate for 2 or 3 weeks, just because our building storage is going to be different than their house. If you're working on a big slab, take it in your shop, usually it's heated and warmed. It'll change a little bit, but you want to make sure when it leaves here the moisture is at a decent moisture content.
The black walnut, we've had issues with a bacterial infection that they'll get in there. It's not very well known, but it creates kind of a cream color, and you'll get spots in the wood that won't dry out. It traps some moisture, so you can be 8% in one spot, but it'll still be 14% in another. And there's really no way to do that after doing some research, but except to actually cut it open, which then ruins the wood. With slabs, it's generally not a big issue. If we dry them down enough, it'll even out over time. But also, if someone goes out and they actually cut up the slab into something smaller, it can be an issue though, because then you're gonna get boards that are gonna move on you because of the moisture issue. Plus, there's actually a color variation that is cream color in the walnut, so if someone sees something like that, if it's a big spot, it makes a difference since people are buying it for appearance. So that's been one thing we have to kind of check on and watch for.
One issue we've had over the years was happened a couple times is people have taken flooring from us that's been dried and they put it in their house, and one house actually up in Seattle, the floor started moving and buckling or whatever, and as we investigated, they actually had water literally running under the house, and so the floor was absorbing that water and it was changing the size of the wood. And they thought it was because it wasn't dried properly. As we investigated, got into things a little deeper, found out there was literally a stream running under their house, and it was going up through the floor and changing the size of the floor. So with wood, it's very tough. You dry the best you can, and there's still stuff that happens. We had another circumstance where a guy actually came in, bought some of our tongue and groove paneling, did an outside patio cover, put it all together very tight, and we had kiln dried it, put it together tight, and then as winter came, since it was an outside patio cover, it absorbed the water and buckled because he had put it together so tight. So there's always, you do the best you can and you meter everything you can, and there's still stuff that comes along, and of course neither one of those we were responsible for, but the customer still gets excited about it. So it is nice to be able to show our customers as the wood leaves here what the moisture is. So if they take it and they store it improperly, or they install it improperly, or they have a moisture problem at their house or at their job site, we can come back and say, hey, it was 10% when it left here. We can go out to a job site, which we have done, with our meter and say, okay, I don't know where this wood has been, how you've stored it. It was 10% when it left here, left our shop. Now you're at 15%. So yes, your size of your boards and your cupping is going to happen and stuff like that as it's reabsorbed moisture. So it's nice to be able to meter here and cover ourselves by knowing what it was when it left.
Probably customer service over time, just building relationships with people. I know with the slabs, that's mainly what I deal with. You're showing people around, they want to look at every different piece. So being able to just talk to them and get exactly what they want, what they're looking for, both, and making sure the good quality also, which includes the moisture. And then we do surfacing. So all those things, just talking with the customer is a big deal, and then the quality with that also.